Greetings, people. Welcome to Gundam Battle Academy, the show on which your old Uncle Jameis teaches you the ins and outs of GBO2 that the game refused to teach you. In today's episode, we will be discussing absolutely everything about the neutral vehicles of the game. On virtually every map in Gundam Battle Operation 2, there are neutral vehicles that are scattered around and can be used by players who have ejected from their suits. On their own, these vehicles aren't terribly powerful, but they can be decisive if used at the right time. They're usually much more mobile than trying to foot-slog it around the map, and they're usually much better armed as a part of the bargain. All vehicles are considered typeless, so they don't do more damage to any specific target type, but they don't take any additional damage from any target type either. The stats for the individual vehicles actually scales depending on the points value of the map. The weapons on the vehicles also scale in strength using the same algorithms they do on mobile suits, roughly 5% per level. As a result, a vehicle will hit about 50% harder at 700 points than it will at 200 points. If they're destroyed, the vehicles will respawn where you found them in about 20 seconds. Ground vehicles in GBO2 can actually be damaged by collisions if they run into enemy mobile suits, so do be careful. You can actually capture points from the inside of one of these vehicles. They can be a very valuable tool on the battlefield, even if they rarely accomplish anything spectacular in most matches. So with that in mind, here's the vehicle locations on every single map. Mountain has 3 Wappas on it, 1 at each base and 1 at point C. Impact Site has 4 Wappas in it, 1 at each base, 1 at point C, and 1 at point D. Port Base varies on the type. All 3 versions of Port Base have a Wappa at each of the bases. Standard Port Base and Late Day Port Base both feature a single Magella attack tank right near point C. Tropical Desert has 4 Magella attack tanks. 1 is at each base, 1 is at point C, and 1 is at point D. Deserted City. Each base has a Type 61 battle tank. Point C and Point D also have additional Type 61 battle tanks. City Ruins has a Type 61 battle tank at both bases. There is also another one near Point C and Point D, respectively. Arctic Base has a single Type 61 battle tank near each base. Military Base has 4 Type 61 tanks, 1 at each base, 1 at Point C, and 1 at Point D. Supply Depot has 2 Type 61 tanks, 1 near each base. Trenches, same deal. 2 Type 61 tanks, both located near the bases. Jungle, Military Port, Colony Drop Area, and Underground Base all lack vehicles. Dark Space has a ball near each base and a single Skyer near the central point at C. Resource Satellite, there's an Ago and a Skyer at each base. Space Fortress, there's an Ago at each base, 1 at point C and 1 at point D. Derelict Colony, both bases have 1 Ago each, and point C and point D have balls. Lunar Debris Belt, there's an Ago at each base, as well as a ball at point E in the center of the map. And there you have it, every neutral vehicle in the game. We'll now be covering each one in turn and what they can do. Right out the gate, we have the Magella attack tank. The Magella is a Xeon battle tank that features a 175mm cannon and a 30mm Vulcan gun. In cannon, the turret can decouple from the rest of the vehicle and fly around as an emergency escape vehicle, but it can't do that in GBO2. In GBO2, the Magella happens to be pretty much the toughest and hardest hitting vehicle in the game. Dealing just over 1,000 damage base, its cannon is a pretty powerful weapon that's also a reliable stagger tool. The 30mm backup cannon it has is a little bit sluggish by machine gun standards, but does good damage and is actually a pretty good accumulation stagger tool. Lastly, it has smoke grenades, which allow it to disappear from radar entirely for about 20 seconds at a stretch. It's a little bit sluggish, but at 4,000 HP base, it's pretty much the only ground vehicle in GBO2 that's likely to survive more than one hit. The second vehicle we will be covering is the Type 61 battle tank. The Type 61 is the Federation's main battle tank. It's significantly faster than the Magella, though it's not as good offensively. Its dual 150mm cannons have just as much stagger as the Magella's main gun, but they aren't anywhere near as powerful. To make up for this, the Type 61 also has an alternate ammo load that can fire cluster munitions. These don't stagger, but they do significantly more damage in a wide area of effect, and allow the Type 61 to function as a fire support vehicle. The 50 caliber gun it has is capable of accumulation stagger, but it's not a very powerful weapon against mobile suits. Will absolutely mess up infantry, though. And lastly, just like the Magella, it gets smoke grenades for stealth. Significantly less durable than the Magella, the Type 61 is kind of an interesting case, because it's easily the most common ground vehicle in the game. It's fast enough to get where you need it to, and its ability to use smoke grenades means you can usually slip away without being noticed. On a few occasions, I've seen the thing used to stealth cap or to slip behind enemy defenses, so it can actually be remarkably effective in that regard. It is noticeably easier to take down than the Magella, though. Next and last on the ground vehicle list, we have the Wappa. WAPA is actually an acronym for Wheelless Aero Palletized Personalized Actuator. It is a one-seater hovercraft that has the ability to fly, albeit at a relatively low altitude. It's by far the most mobile ground vehicle, but it's also the easiest one to destroy with only 800 base health. Make no mistake, this one's for point control and recon. It is not intended for out-and-out combat. Its weapons include a missile launcher that can fire multiple missiles in a barrage, and a machine gun. Neither one of which make it an especially good contributor to any combat situation, though the missiles are pretty good at accumulation stagger. The WAPA's greatest asset by far is its mobility. Because it can fly, it can easily go over intervening terrain features. It's most commonly used for emergency backcaps or as an escape vehicle after bombing an enemy base. Next up, we have the AGO. The AGO is a space-based mobile pod. Its weapons include a missile rack and a Zaku machine gun. Like the WAPA, its main use is as an emergency backcap vehicle. Like the WAPA, it's not exactly a huge contributor to fights, but unlike the WAPA, it's actually capable of being a reliable harass unit in an emergency. It's easily the most common space-based vehicle, so it is something to take advantage of. Next up, we have the Ball. The Ball is a Federation-based mobile pod, and unlike most of the other neutral vehicles, the Ball is actually technically a threat. It only has one weapon, a mounted cannon with stagger. However, the cannon is easily capable of keeping an enemy on the back foot, and unlike most of the other vehicles on this list, the Ball has thrusters. This also gives the Ball something else it can do that no other vehicle can. Namely, tackle. Now, before you ask, no, the Ball can't counter. However, if it lands a tackle at the right time, the enemy mobile suit will still be knocked down and will still take tackle damage. At low cost, I have seen a surprising number of Balls win 1v1s. As ever, the easiest way to deal with a hostile vehicle is to focus it down. The Ball's just slightly harder to deal with than most. The last neutral vehicle we'll be covering is also by far the most unique one, the Skyer. Unlike the other vehicles, where you have to be on foot to mount them, for the Skyer, you have to be in a mobile suit to do it. And even then, it only works if you're a smaller mobile suit like a Zaku or a GM. Larger suits, like from the 700 cost bracket, won't fit in the thing. The Skyer is unquestionably the most dangerous neutral vehicle in the entire game. It is a mobile platform that is equipped with a very, very powerful beam cannon. This beam cannon has a very slow cycle rate, but it pierces terrain and instantly knocks down whatever it hits, while also dealing extremely heavy damage as part of the bargain. It's very slow and renders your mobile suit easy to hit, but the range and punch of the main gun frankly demand respect. The base damage of the Skyer is around 2400 attack power, which is extremely high for 200 points. Which in turn means its base damage at 700 is around 3600. As a result, the Skyer actually remains relevant for pretty much the entire game. However, for all of its power, the Skyer actually has three big downsides. First of all, it's fragile. While it being destroyed won't harm the mobile suit riding it any, it is extremely easy to focus down, especially in high-cost games. The second weakness is the mobility. It's not very fast, and it doesn't turn particularly fast either. The biggest weakness, however, is its cooldown time. The Skyer has a pretty long lag between shots, but more important than that, if you overheat the beam cannon, it's got nearly a 30-second cooldown time. That cooldown time is not passive. If you overheat the beam cannon and then hop out 5 seconds into the cooldown cycle, when someone else hops in, they still have to deal with the other 25 seconds worth of cooldown. As a result, the thing is often mission killed if you actually overheat the cannon. Almost uniquely among the neutral vehicles, the Skyer is the only one that tends to have a major impact on normal matches. Keep your eyes open and be sure to act accordingly if you see that beam fire. All in all, neutral vehicles are an interesting aspect of gameplay that often goes ignored and usually shouldn't. They may never be anywhere near as powerful or useful as mobile suits, but the mere fact that they're around and available can completely change how a map flows. Take advantage of them whenever you can.